The room smelled of regret and roses that had long lost their fragrance. My trembling fingers brushed over the wedding ring I no longer deserved to wear, the symbol of a man I betrayed. That night, I stared at the empty side of the bed where he used to sleep and whispered words that no amount of tears could wash away. I wish I loved him the way he loved me. Before I go any further, I want to appreciate every soul watching right now. Thank you to my returning viewers for your endless support, and to my new listeners, welcome. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button, because your engagement is the heartbeat that keeps this channel alive. Do not forget to share your thoughts in the comments, your voices truly matter here. Now, let me tell you how it all began. Ethan Cole was not the kind of man who turned heads in a crowded room, but there was something about him that made you feel safe, like home. We met at a small coffee shop in downtown Atlanta, where he worked part-time while trying to build his dream business. His clothes were simple, his laughter unpolished, but his eyes carried an honesty I had rarely seen in men. I was 28 then, working in a real estate firm, ambitious, proud, and addicted to the idea of a perfect life. Ethan loved me deeply, but his dreams were bigger than his bank account, and I began to resent the struggle that came with loving him. At first, I told myself it was patience. That I could endure the long nights of ramen noodles, the unpaid bills, and the borrowed gas money. But deep down, I was scared that love without luxury would fade, that comfort without cash would crumble. That was when Michael Reed entered my life. He was everything Ethan was not: confident, wealthy, and dangerously charming. We met at a corporate dinner hosted by one of our clients. Michael was a real estate investor, older by nearly 10 years, with a presence that made every woman turn twice. He spoke with authority, smiled with control, and wore his success like a second skin. When he looked at me, I felt seen, not for my patience, not for my struggle, but for my beauty, my ambition, my hunger for more. And that was the beginning of my downfall. Ethan noticed the change in me. He began to stay quiet during dinner, speaking only when necessary. He would look at me with eyes that asked questions my lips refused to answer. One night, he told me softly, "Lauren, I may not have much now, but one day, I will give you everything you deserve." But in my pride, I wanted everything now. So I started lying, first small lies, then larger ones that dripped with sin. I said I was working late, attending conferences, meeting clients. But in truth, I was meeting Michael. Our affair began with what I told myself was harmless: dinners, drinks, and laughter. Yet every night I spent with him, I left a piece of Ethan's love behind. I told myself that what Ethan could not give, Michael could. And I believed it, until the day Ethan surprised me at my office. He had saved enough money to buy me a small car. It was not fancy, but it was his way of saying, "I believe in us." I remember how his hands trembled as he handed me the keys. I remember how my heart twisted because, that very morning, I had been in Michael's bed. That was the night guilt began to whisper louder than temptation. But I did not stop. I was blinded by what I thought was love, the kind that came wrapped in luxury and power. Michael made me feel desired in ways Ethan never could. He told me things every woman wants to hear: that I was beautiful, special, irreplaceable. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. Until the day I realized I was only one of many. One evening, I was at his penthouse apartment when his phone rang. He excused himself, but curiosity led me to glance at the screen. The name read, "Vanessa, wife." For a moment, my heart stopped. I wanted to believe it was a misunderstanding, but deep down, I knew. The man I betrayed my husband for had already betrayed someone else. I went home that night broken, numb, and empty. Ethan was asleep on the couch, a laptop still open beside him. I glanced at the screen. It showed several emails titled "Investment Proposal, Innovations." He had been working late nights, not for himself, but for us. In that moment, I saw the truth I had been blind to: he was never lazy, never unambitious, he was building, quietly, patiently, and faithfully. And I had traded his sincerity for illusion. Still, I kept the secret of my affair buried. I convinced myself I could fix what I broke, but guilt became my shadow. Every time Ethan smiled, I felt the ache of my deceit. And then, one morning, he left for a business trip. He kissed my forehead and said, "When I return, everything will change." He never came back. That was the last time I saw Ethan Cole, the man who loved me beyond measure, even when I did not deserve it. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, but no calls, no messages, no trace. It was as though he had vanished into thin air. I did not know then that his disappearance was not an accident, it was a lesson. One I would learn in the most painful way possible. Because Ethan Cole was never broke. He was a man testing the depth of love, and I failed the test miserably. The morning Ethan left felt strange, too calm, too silent. I remembered standing at the doorway, waving goodbye as his car disappeared into the early dawn. I never imagined that moment would become a memory I would replay 1,000 times in regret. For days, I waited for his call. I checked my phone every hour, pretending to believe he was just busy. But as weeks passed, the silence grew heavier. Ethan had vanished, no messages, no traces, no clues. His phone was disconnected, and his workplace said he had resigned. It was as though he had erased himself from my world completely. At first, I was angry. I told myself he had abandoned me, that perhaps he had discovered my affair and decided to punish me with absence. But deep down, beneath the anger, there was guilt gnawing at my soul, a quiet voice whispering that I had brought this upon myself. Michael was still in my life then. He became my comfort, my distraction, and soon, my entire world. He promised me a new beginning, a life of stability and wealth. I moved into his luxurious apartment overlooking the city skyline, everything I once dreamed of. But even surrounded by glitter and glass, I felt an emptiness that no chandelier could fill. Michael was not the man I thought he was. The first sign came subtly, the way he corrected me in public, the way his compliments carried a hint of control. At dinners, he would grip my hand too tightly whenever another man's eyes lingered too long. He called it protection, but I began to see it for what it truly was, possession. At night, when I could not sleep, I would lie awake thinking of Ethan, his calm voice, his soft laugh, the way he never tried to own me but only loved me. I started to realize that peace and love were two very different things. One rainy afternoon, as I unpacked boxes in Michael's apartment, I found a small, forgotten envelope tucked inside my old purse, a letter Ethan had written before he left. My hands trembled as I opened it. Lauren. If love were measured by comfort, I would have lost the day we met. But if it is measured by patience, sacrifice, and faith, then I hope you see how much I truly love you. I will not fight for someone who does not choose me. But when you finally see the truth, I pray it is not too late. Ethan. I read that letter until the ink blurred through my tears. His words burned through me, exposing the truth I had buried. I had not left Ethan because he was broke, I left him because I was blind. Months passed. Life with Michael became a gilded cage. He provided everything I once thought I wanted, money, luxury, and attention, but it all came with a price. Every decision had to be approved. Every friend had to be explained. He questioned where I went, who I spoke with, even how I dressed. At first, I convinced myself it was love. But love does not make you feel small. Love does not cage you in fear. One night, we attended a charity gala filled with influential people. I smiled through the evening, pretending to be the picture of a perfect partner. But as I walked past a group of businessmen, one of them called out Michael's name. I turned and froze. It was Ethan. He was standing tall, dressed in a black suit that looked tailored to perfection. He was no longer the man with worn-out shoes and budget coffee dates. His posture carried confidence, his expression calm, almost unreadable. The room seemed to fade around me. Our eyes met for only a second, but that second shattered everything. I tried to speak, but my voice failed. Ethan gave me a polite nod, the kind reserved for strangers, and turned to continue his conversation. Michael leaned in, sensing my shock. "You know him?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered, barely audible. "He is my husband." Michael's smile faltered. The air around us turned tense. That night, I realized that my past had returned, not as a memory, but as a revelation. Later that week, I did my research. What I discovered left me breathless. Ethan Cole was now the founder and CEO of Cole Innovations, a multi-million-dollar tech company based in Atlanta. The business proposals I once dismissed as fantasies had become a thriving reality. He had not been broke, he had been disguising. Testing love, my love, to see if it was pure. And I failed. The man I thought was small had become everything I once desired, while the man I chose had become my greatest mistake. I tried to contact Ethan, but his office declined my calls. His personal assistant said he was unavailable. I sent emails, letters, messages, none were returned. I even showed up at one of his conferences, but his security stopped me at the entrance. I stood there in the cold lobby, watching him speak to a crowd of hundreds, his voice strong and confident. And I realized something devastating: I had become invisible to the man who once saw me as his world. Michael grew suspicious of my emotional distance. He accused me of longing for my past. In truth, he was right. I could not stop thinking about Ethan. But instead of compassion, Michael responded with anger. One evening, during an argument, he said words that cut deep. You left him because he was broke, and now you want him because he is rich. You are not in love, Lauren. You are obsessed with regret. For the first time, I saw myself through his cruel honesty, and it hurt because it was true. The days that followed were a blur of silence and guilt. I left Michael soon after. I packed my things quietly and returned to the small apartment Ethan and I once shared. It was now empty, dusty, and filled with ghosts of laughter and promises. I walked through the rooms, touching the walls, the faded photos, the faint scent of memories. And I broke down completely. That night, I sat on the cold floor, clutching Ethan's old letter, whispering to the emptiness. I wish I loved you the way you loved me. I finally understood that love is not about status, or wealth, or perfection. It is about presence, the kind that stays even when there is nothing left to gain. A month later, I received an invitation. It was from Cole Innovations. Ethan was hosting a charity event for women in business. The irony was painful: I had betrayed a man who had become the kind of person who lifted others up. I stared at that invitation for hours, unsure if I had the courage to face him again. But I had to try. I had to tell him the truth, even if forgiveness was a dream I did not deserve. Because sometimes, the only way to heal from a wound is to face the one who inflicted it, even if that person is yourself. The night of the charity gala was colder than I expected. The Atlanta skyline glittered with its usual confidence, but I felt small beneath it. My dress was elegant, my hair perfectly styled, yet no amount of beauty could hide the trembling inside me. I was not there to impress anyone. I was there to face the man I broke. When I arrived at the venue, the Marriott Grand Ballroom, I could feel the weight of luxury pressing against my conscience. The scent of lilies filled the air, mingled with soft jazz and murmurs of success. Everyone was smiling, shaking hands, taking pictures. Everyone, except me. Then, I saw him. Ethan Cole stood at the center of the room, speaking with quiet authority. His suit was black, his demeanor poised, his expression unreadable. He looked like a man who had not only rebuilt his life but refined it. He was no longer the dreamer struggling to find his path, he was the man who had arrived at his destination. And I was the one who had taken the wrong turn. As I walked closer, my heart thudded so loudly I could almost hear it over the music. He noticed me before I reached him. His eyes froze for a brief second, then softened with recognition, but not warmth. It was the look one gives to a distant memory. "Lauren," he said, his tone even, professional, almost detached. "Ethan," my voice cracked, betraying the weight I carried. I did not come here to interrupt. I just wanted a moment of your time." He glanced at his watch. 5 minutes. We stepped outside to the terrace where the city lights burned like silent witnesses. The cold air bit through my dress, but I barely felt it. I know I am the last person you want to see, I began, my eyes fixed on the skyline. But I had to come. I had to tell you that I am sorry. Ethan said nothing. He simply looked at me, calm, composed, unyielding. I thought love was supposed to make life easier, I continued, my voice trembling. I thought happiness came from comfort and wealth. But I was wrong. You gave me something far greater, loyalty, patience, and faith, and I threw it away. He folded his hands, his expression still unreadable. You did not just throw it away, Lauren. You shattered it. And sometimes, broken things cannot be fixed, no matter how sorry we are. His words cut through me like a blade of truth. Tears welled in my eyes. I deserve that. I know. But please believe me, Ethan, I regret it every single day. When you left, I lost more than a husband. I lost the only man who ever saw me for who I was, not for what I had. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he sighed. Do you know why I left the way I did? I shook my head silently. I knew about Michael before I walked out that door, he said. I knew about the lies, the late nights, the perfume that was not yours. But I did not leave because I hated you. I left because I loved you too much to watch you destroy yourself. My breath caught. You knew? He nodded slowly. I knew, but I also understood something. You were chasing what you thought love should look like, not what it truly was. And I wanted to give you space to realize it, even if that meant losing you. Tears rolled freely down my cheeks. And did you ever stop loving me? He looked away for a moment, the city lights reflecting in his eyes. Love does not just stop, Lauren. It changes form. It becomes quieter, distant, but it never completely dies. Those words broke me. I covered my face, sobbing silently. He did not reach out, did not comfort me, and somehow, that hurt more than anything else. His restraint told me that time had built a wall I could no longer climb. I do not expect you to forgive me, I whispered. But I needed to see you one last time. I needed to say it out loud, that I wish I loved you the way you loved me. He turned to face me fully. You did love me, Lauren. Just not in the way I needed. And that is the tragedy of it, we can care deeply for someone and still fail to love them right. Silence lingered between us, heavy and honest. Finally, Ethan extended his hand, not as a lover, not even as a friend, but as a man who had made peace with the past. Take care of yourself, he said quietly. I took his hand, feeling the warmth that once anchored my world. For a moment, it felt like coming home, only to realize home no longer existed. As I turned to leave, he called after me. Lauren. I stopped, holding my breath. Do not let regret define you. Let it teach you. I nodded, unable to speak, and walked away, each step heavier than the last. Life after that night became a quiet process of rediscovery. I left the city, found a small apartment near the coast, and started working as a volunteer counselor for women recovering from broken relationships. It was my way of giving back, of turning pain into purpose. Every morning, I would walk along the beach and think of Ethan, not with longing, but with gratitude. He had taught me that love is not about what someone can give you, but what you are willing to give back. Years later, I heard he had married again, a woman named Grace, a kind-hearted teacher. When I saw their photo in a magazine feature about his company, I smiled. He looked happy, genuinely happy. And for the first time I felt peace. I no longer blamed myself for falling, I only blamed myself for not rising sooner. Sometimes, at night, I still replay our memories. The laughter, the late-night talks, the plans we never saw through. But instead of pain, I now feel gratitude, because even though I lost him, he helped me find myself. There is a quiet truth about love and betrayal that I wish I had understood earlier. When you betray someone who loves you deeply, you are not only hurting them, you are destroying the part of yourself that was capable of loving purely. I will never have Ethan again, but I will always have the memory of the way he loved me, fully, selflessly, unconditionally. And maybe that is enough. As I close this chapter of my life, I leave you with this. If you are lucky enough to find someone who loves you with honesty and patience, do not let pride or temporary desires blind you. True love does not glitter, it glows quietly in the dark when everything else fades. Because one day, you might look back and whisper the same words I do every night before I sleep. I wish I loved him the way he loved me. And that, dear listener, is the story of how love was lost, not because it was weak, but because it was taken for granted. Lauren's story is a mirror that reflects how quickly desire can blur truth, and how easily we can trade something pure for something that only shines on the surface. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to reflect. Have you ever walked away from someone who truly loved you? Have you ever mistaken wealth or comfort for real affection? Sometimes, the greatest heartbreak is realizing that the person we pushed away was the one we were meant to grow old with. Let this story remind us all, never measure love by what someone has, but by what they give from the heart. Until next time, keep your hearts guarded but open, your love honest, and your choices wise. Because in the end, nothing hurts deeper than saying, I wish I loved them the way they loved me.